In a quiet corner of Oak Ridge Park, beneath a century-old banyan tree, sat an old man named Harish. Every morning at 7 a.m., he'd arrive with a thermos of ginger tea, a well-worn book of poems, and a silence that spoke of a lifetime lived. At 78, Harish felt invisible. His children were busy with their careers, his grandchildren with their own lives. Friends had either passed on or moved away. At family gatherings, he was a ghost in the room. He'd smile and nod, his stories met with polite glances. His advice gently brushed aside as old-fashioned. His son would often say, kindly but firmly, "Times have changed, Papa. Your way isn't the only way anymore." Harish never argued, but inside, a quiet question echoed, "Did my life mean anything if no one remembers what I learned?" He watched the world rush past his park bench. Young people, eyes glued to their phones, shoulders tense with worry. He saw a girl crying quietly over a broken dream, a boy arguing with his father about wanting to go to art school, a woman sitting alone, staring at a wedding ring in her palm. He wanted to speak, to tell them, "I've been there. I know that exact ache." But who would listen to an old man with trembling hands and outdated clothes? One rainy afternoon, his world shifted. A teenager, soaked and shivering, slumped onto the far end of his bench, his eyes red from crying. Harish didn't ask what was wrong. He simply offered his umbrella and said, "The storm passes. You just have to stay dry long enough to see the sun again." The boy looked up, startled. "You talk like my grandfather used to." Harish smiled gently. "I am someone's grandfather, and once I was where you are lost, angry, and sure that no one understood." They talked for an hour, not about solutions, but about the simple, powerful feeling of being seen. The next day, the boy returned, and the next. Soon, others came, drawn not by fame, but by Harish's quiet presence. The anxious college student, the widow who missed her husband's voice, the young father struggling to raise a child on his own. Harish never lectured. He shared stories from his own life, his failures in business, the year he lost his wife to illness, the time he walked 50 kilometers to find work and slept under bridges. "Strength isn't about never falling," he'd say, stirring his tea. "It's about getting up one more time than you're knocked down." His stories were not grand tales of heroism, but simple chronicles of resilience. Word spread. The local community center asked him to lead a wisdom circle, a weekly gathering, where elders could share life lessons with younger generations. Harish hesitated. "Who wants to hear an old man's ramblings?" But the boy from that rainy day stood up in the crowd. "We do," he said firmly. "Because you don't just tell us what to do, you remind us we're not alone." So Harish said yes. In that circle, he wasn't past his time. He was a bridge, a keeper of patience, resilience, and quiet courage. He showed them that experience isn't a relic, it's a map. Years later, after Harish passed peacefully in his sleep, the park bench was replaced with a new one. Carved from teak, it bore a small brass plaque in memory of Harish Mehta, who taught us that wisdom isn't loud, but it always finds the heart ready to listen. And every morning, someone sits there, young or old, just to remember that being seen isn't about age. It's about showing up with your truth and trusting that it still matters. The moral of Harish's life is simple. Confidence in our later years isn't about chasing youth or relevance. It's the quiet certainty that your life, your scars, and even your silence have value. You don't need a spotlight to shine. Sometimes all the world needs is an old man on a bench who dares to say, "I'm still here and I've got something to share." Because wisdom doesn't retire. It just waits for someone willing to listen. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that inspires. We'll see you in the next one.